power and influence say, like, I can survive not being liked for a minute, for a month, for a week, right? I can survive not being liked forever by some people. And getting that approval is like rocket fuel at that point. But somewhere along the way, it starts to feel heavier. If we ever want to be fully evolved, fully expressed as our best selves, we're going to have to outgrow that dependence on approval. When was the last time that you delayed making a decision that you knew you needed to make because you just didn't want the backlash that might come with it? This is episode 439 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And today I'm talking about when being liked becomes a limiter. So thanks for tuning in to today's episode. I've been working on this one for a little while, kind of toying with this idea, and I'm really excited to share it with you today. I have a couple of different angles and ways in that we're going to dig into. So settle in for a minute and let's do this. The premise of this episode is that I think rooted in most women that I have ever met have a pretty high need to be liked, right? And I think it is indoctrinated or trained into us pretty early on as young girls and then as teenagers, and then probably early in our careers where approval really fuels achievement. Like every time somebody tells us you're doing a good job, or somebody warmly reacts to us or tells us that they like us, right? In any way, like we will do more of that. We will continue to repeat that behavior because it is something that makes us feel liked, right? And I think that feels really good. That the habits that helped you rise as a student and early in your career, right? Being dependable, being accommodating, being likable. At some point along the path, these become the constraint that can keep you small. And I think there's a stage in life where we have to acknowledge that while we don't want to reject approval outright, right? I still love being liked. We have to outgrow our dependence on it. If we ever want to be fully evolved, fully expressed as our best selves, we're going to have to outgrow that dependence on approval. There's a season of life when being liked is strategic, right? We need people to like us when we are children. They have to take care of us. And we sort of carry that into, teachers liking us or bosses liking us or clients liking us. We're agreeable, we're capable, we're impressive, and getting that approval is like rocket fuel at that point. But somewhere along the way, it starts to feel heavier. Like our job becomes more about managing perception than it does about forging outcomes, like shaping outcomes, creating outcomes that we want. And I just want you to think about, when was the last time that you remember maybe something as easy as like softening your opinion so that no one felt uncomfortable? Right? You just change your language a little bit. You just soften it a touch so that no one around you feels uncomfortable. Or when was the last time that you delayed making a decision that you knew you needed to make because you just didn't want the backlash that might come with it? Or when is the last time you remember like holding your tongue, just, I'm going to swallow this down, not because you were wrong, not because what you were going to say wasn't true, but because you just didn't want to be disliked. Okay. Now we're to the heart of it. This whole episode, I want to talk about that kind of drug of approval and what we need to do to get free from it so that we really can have what we want most of all. All right. So we're going to talk about why approval was so powerful early on. What did it get us? What happens at this kind of inflection point somewhere in midlife? What do we actually want? Right. And how do we get it? And then I want to talk about the hidden cost of continuing to chase approval at this stage and what we might have to shift about our own identity in order to get free. So buckle up. This is going to be a good one. All right. First of all, I want to talk about why was approval so powerful early on? Well, I think for me, approval signaled belonging, right? It was the way that I got doors to open. It's the way I built my early network. It was how I protected my reputation. I think approval helped me accelerate my progress. Like I got promoted, right? Or I made friends and found people to date and someone to marry. Like all of those things that we need approval for in early adulthood are about sort of shaping ourselves into the person that we think we need to be to get other people to like us or to give us that approval. And I think this is especially true for women who were high achievers early on. Like if you were a great student, I was a great student. That was kind of my identity. You can ask anybody I went to high school with. Um, if you were a great athlete, right? If you were a great actress or performer, if you were a musician, if you had a level of high achievement, then approval and performance probably got locked in early for you. Like your need to have external approval and validation probably got locked in. So those straight A students, the rule followers, kind of where high competence meets high compliance, we were really socialized to be impressive and pleasant because if you weren't also managing your approval rating, so to speak, right? No one was going to like you. And I mean, we were counseled actively around this. Like, don't raise your hand too many times. Don't have all the answers. Don't always get the best grade, right? Those were things that I think those of us who were great students were counseled. If you were the athlete, it was other people need a turn, pass the ball, let other people kind of have a chance to play. And that's all about keeping this approval, keeping people liking us as kind of a second plate that we had to keep spinning in addition to achievement. So approval in that era wasn't weak, right? And it wasn't wrong. It was really strategy. It was strategic. And it helped us move forward, like get ahead, but it didn't necessarily help us grow into the most evolved version of ourselves. And there is a point in midlife where this shifts. And honestly, we no longer have to try to prove that we're capable. We no longer have to try to get picked. We no longer have to try to earn our entry into some circle. Like we are who we are, right? We have credentials, we have experience, we have resources. And the question at this point becomes, are we still optimizing to be liked? Or are we optimizing to really forge our future direction, like to claim power, to have influence, true influence, right? To make a difference in something that we know something about, because they're not always going to play nicely together. Approval-oriented behavior, and I'll call it power-oriented behavior, they don't always play nicely together. Let's talk about what is approval-oriented behavior. What do you do if you're really governed by your need for approval? Well, you're going to seek consensus, right? It's like the committee of approvers. You have to go to everybody to make sure that they agree with what you're doing. Whereas if you're power-oriented or influence-oriented, you're going to set the direction with or without consensus. You might get buy-in, right? But you're not going to need to have every single person bless every single decision that you're trying to make. If you are governed by approval, you're going to avoid discomfort. Anything that feels like conflict or discomfort, you're going to avoid. But if you're power and influence oriented, you're going to leverage that tension to move things forward, right? Discomfort, you'll lean into it. You will lean into conflict because you're confident you can move through it. If you're approval oriented, I think a lot of the behavior associated with this is like explaining things excessively. Like I have to give you all the context. I have to get everybody's buy-in. I have to make sure you understand everything I've ever thought about this point I'm making or decision that I'm recommending. Whereas power and influence orientation says, I'm just going to tell it like it is, right? I'm going to speak plainly. You're going to get sort of the unvarnished truth here. You may or may not like it. We can talk about it if you want, but it's not going to really affect my ability to move forward or make this decision. Big differences already, right? That you can see between these two lenses. I think approval-oriented behavior softens the edges of everything, right? And sometimes in so doing, like dilutes the meaning. I think sometimes when we're softening the edges of our message, we are diluting the meaning, right? We lose the punch, and the words don't pack a punch anymore. They're they just fall away, right? And whereas a power and influence oriented person really is able to hold firm to a point of view. Even if that point of view is unpopular, they're going to kind of communicate it with strength, with conviction, not softening the edges, allowing it to kind of be a full-blown idea. And the last one I was thinking about is I think approval oriented behavior manages the optics of everything. Like, how does this look? How is it going to look to my close in circle? How is it going to look to the people in the cheap seats? Like everybody who we think is looking at us, sort of this, um, external gaze that we think is fixated on us all the time. How is it going to look to the sort of amorphous them? Whereas if you're power and influence oriented, you are much more focused on shaping outcomes, less on managing optics and more on managing outcomes, right? I am focused on where I'm trying to get. What am I trying to get out of this? What are we trying to accomplish here? And if it doesn't look the way, like I know the true story, if it doesn't look the way everybody wants it to look, like that's okay. And I think this shift from approval oriented to power and influence oriented is where a lot of us get stuck. Maybe we have like one foot in each of these two worlds and we aren't sure how to really fully complete the conversion because it's scary, right? It's threatening to think about what could happen. Some people will not like your decisions. Some relationships will have to like recalibrate themselves when you are truth telling. You will be misunderstood. I think this need to be understood to have everybody understand our intentions and the whole story behind why we're doing it is so powerful. It's been so powerful for me for so long. Context is like one of my favorite words. Let me just give you the context on this because I think so much of that is I want to be understood. And my identity has been so rooted for years in being like a good girl that you can't give everybody all the context all the time if you really want to have power and influence. So this is a really big shift. And I want to clarify here what I mean by power. I've used that word a lot in this episode already. And every time I say it, I can feel myself like bracing for the listener who's going to be like, oh, but power, Cheryl Ann, do we really want power? Yes, I think we want power. I think we want power, but not the toxic version of power, right? Power is not about dominance. It's not about arrogance. It's not like steamrolling over people to only think about ourselves and do whatever we want. I think power is a lot more aligned with influence, right? Being able to move people in a direction, to move them to action, to shape their thinking, right? To leverage this like hard earned wisdom that we've gained over years or decades of life experience and be able to pay that forward. That is powerful, right? That influence is rooted in self-trust. It's rooted in like emotional steadiness or groundedness. That influence is rooted in clarity and decisiveness, like knowing what we actually mean and being able to communicate it. And honestly, it's really rooted in a willingness to like withstand disapproval, to be able to tolerate it if somebody is like, I don't like that you said that. I don't agree with you at all. I tell my kids sometimes, don't be a cardboard wall, right? If you have a point of view and you make it, and I come back at you or someone comes back at you and says, I disagree, and you fold, you fold like a cardboard wall, right? You just lay down. There is no growth in that. The growth is in having a point of view and advocating for it. And sometimes saying, you know what? I'm wrong. My thinking on this has been shaped by what you just said back. I'll lay that one down, but to do that with intention, not to do it because you're running away from the perception of conflict, right? Or somebody else having a different opinion. I'm really working with my kids on being able to hold up an opinion and their end of an argument, even if I know I'm right, right? But sometimes I'm not. And sometimes that ability to let them stay in it and keep advocating for what they really want me to understand, there's so much growth in that. There's growth in that for all of us, right? We can survive. Power and influence say, like, I can survive not being liked for a minute, for a month, for a week, right? I can survive not being liked forever by some people. And that's the freedom that is on the table here, right? Authority, being able to have the authority over yourself to make the decisions that are right for you, to have the authority within your organization, like your workplace, to make decisions that are right for that organization, the authority in your family to make decisions that are right for your family. That's what's on the table here. And if we can't tolerate being disliked or having somebody disagree with us, we will not get there. So there's a really significant cost to continuing to chase approval at this stage of life. If you are still optimizing for approval instead of for power and influence, you're going to recognize a couple of behaviors in yourself, right? You're probably still over explaining everything you do, right? There's a bunch of overs here. Over explaining, I wrote down, over accommodating, like you'll bend to make sure everybody else's needs are met so that they like you and your decision. So even if you can get yourself to like make the call and push forward to implementation, you'll handle everybody's business in addition to your own to make sure that it goes down easy. I think that's a behavior I see a lot. Over functioning, like I will just rush in and handle it all. We're going to do something hard here, but the only way I know how to lead through it is if I also do it all. And that rush to overfunction, to like do it all for everyone else, huge capacity drain, hugely undermines the power and influence that you could hold, right? So you don't have to execute all the pieces of a decision when you make the decision. You can make a powerful decision and let other people figure it out. So those are the over functioning, over explaining, over accommodating. And I have 3 unders. If you're still optimizing for approval, you're probably under challenging the status quo, under challenging the people in your life, under challenging the assumptions that you've been operating under, right? You're probably under claiming space for yourself, right? You're allowing everybody else to kind of come in and encroach on space that could be yours, your territory, to wield that power and influence. You're just kind of underclaiming it and letting people sort of walk all over you, if we think about that metaphorically. And I think particularly if you are somebody who is a business owner, an entrepreneur, and maybe even you could think about this in an employment status, you're probably undercharging, right? You probably haven't fully evolved into what you are worth, whether that is coming to you through a salary or whether that is coming to you through what you charge for your work. So you become like this safe vanilla choice where people like you, right? But they're not really catalyzed by you. You're not moving them to action. You don't really have any influence. You're just going along to get along, sort of floating along with other people instead of being the one who's setting the tone, setting the pace. And I think this is a life stage where we don't want that anymore, right? We want impact. We want legacy. We want freedom to be able to make choices that bring other people along with us instead of just going along with what's happening around us. So being wired for approval, it takes up all the energy that is required for influence and power. It's like it's all draining into that valve. And we need to say, hold on, I need to redirect this energy that I am using to gain approval. And I got to move it over here into influence and power. And that, my friends, is an identity shift, right? Your earlier identity is rooted in like, I am valuable because I am pleasant and I am impressive. And so everyone will like me. Like that is the identity that so many of us had. I'm going to earn it. I'm going to earn this approval by being awesome at what I do. And I am going to make sure that I don't do anything that's going to ruffle any feathers because I really want to be liked. But the new identity is I am valuable because I see things clearly and I act courageously. Like I have a vision and I am willing to go after it. And I'm going to bring other people along for the ride. And that means sometimes you're going to say something that people do not like. Sometimes you're going to do something that people do not agree with or approve of. But you are going to move with clarity and confidence in the direction that is right for you, your organization, your family, your people. Right? That is a big shift. And I want you to really consider today, like, where are you in this cycle? What if you stopped needing everyone in the room to agree with you and you were okay that some people just didn't? And what if you trusted like that being respected mattered more than being like adored or admired? Doesn't mean that you become cold. I'm not suggesting that we become cold or uncaring about the impact of these decisions on other people, right? Of course, we are going to be mindful of the impact of these decisions, but everyone, even good ideas, everyone doesn't like immediately, right? Sometimes it just takes time for people to catch up with a good idea. And if you want to be a leader and you want to have power and you want to have influence, you're going to have to move before they're ready. And sometimes you're going to have to do and say things that people aren't quite ready to do or to hear. So I want to give you a couple of practical things that you can do if you find yourself sort of at this crossroads. And I think they're just a few steps that are going to help you kind of put this into play in your real life and see if you can nudge yourself, get one foot off the fence and nudge yourself a little further in the direction of power and influence. So first thing is, I want you to notice where you are editing yourself. I've done it at least 3 times in this episode where I've softened what I meant to say. And I caught myself as I was doing it. Like, there it is. You're softening the language because you're worried that somebody is going to think, oh, that's too strong. That's too much. Right? So this is a living practice, y'all. I am right in it with you. Figuring out where are you going to stop editing yourself and just say what you mean, right? The way you mean it, the whole thing. Second is stop apologizing for clarity, right? Stop apologizing that you are clear about what you want or what you need or what you are asking people to do, and just ask. That whole apology cycle around, we think that that's going to make us more likable, right? I'm so sorry that I'm asking for this. I'm sorry I'm calling this out. That's somehow we're going to be more likable if we do that. We're softening the edges. Stop doing that. Another one, this is really practical. Make one decision this week without polling everybody about it before you make it. Just make the call, right? You have the data, you have the intuition, one or the other or both, to just make the call and move to implementation instead of wasting all of that time polling everybody about what they think you should do. Next idea, let somebody be disappointed. Just let them be disappointed for a minute. You'll survive. But I want you to learn to hold the tension between making an unpopular decision or issuing an unpopular directive. And I think we immediately rush in to soften it, clean it up, get everybody back on the same page instead of just hold the tension of letting somebody be disappointed for a minute. People are not happy all the time. And sometimes they're not going to be happy with you. And really learning how to do that is huge. And the last one is really important. And it's to separate discomfort from danger. So I've been thinking about this a lot in the context of nervous system regulation because we're talking about that. And I think sometimes our bodies interpret discomfort as danger. And we start to get a lot of signals, almost like biofeedback of you are not okay. You are not okay. Alert, alert, right? And really all we are is uncomfortable. And discomfort does not always mean danger. So sometimes we have to go, yeah, I'm uncomfortable because I haven't done this before. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to turn out, but I'm going to hold that discomfort for a minute here and see what happens. So that's what I want you to think about this week is where can you choose influence where you would normally choose approval, right? Where are you going to set the tone instead of sort of going along with whatever the energy of the group is? Not everywhere. You don't do this everywhere in your life, but just one time to see what it feels like. Because when you stop chasing approval, you get a huge surge of energy that you can redirect. All of that energy that is going toward needing approval and the time that is spent trying to get it, trying to acquire it from all the people involved, you get to redirect that into power and influence about the ideas that you actually care about the most, right? Everything becomes more honest. Your decisions speed up. You have this embodied sense of authority. You are going to learn that people will follow you, right? And interestingly, you often become more admired, more respected when you stop trying to be. It's such a paradox, but it is absolutely true because admiration at that point becomes like a byproduct, not the goal. People respect the actions, they respect the decisions, they admire your courage. But that was never your goal. Okay. So if you think about your early life and you can see younger you really just wanting access, like, how am I going to get in the room, get in the game? But now you want like authority, right? You want to be the person in charge. Or like earlier, you was like, I just want to be chosen. I just want somebody to pick me. And now you want to do the choosing. You're ripe for this transformation. This is a really important transformation that I think I want to see all of us making. So hit me up with what you are doing to move from approval to power, and tell me your stories. You can do that by responding to any of the emails that we send you if you're on our list via the weekly. You can find me on social media. Instagram is at @cschoolnikki. That's an easy place. I know a lot of you have a very growing group on LinkedIn right now, so I love that. You can hit me up on LinkedIn and just search my first and last name there. And I really love hearing from you and getting to know members of this community and this listenership to understand what are the topics that matter to you. How can we build them into podcasts in the future and really continue to evolve together? So thanks for tuning in today. That's all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.